Po 2 lotach, Frankfurt, potem Kuwait, teraz Bahrain, dotarliśmy w końcu do hotelu. Na lotnisku musieliśmy zrobić test na COVID i w tym momencie jesteśmy na 6-godzinnej minimum kwarantannie do momentu, aż będziemy mieli negatywny wynik. Przywitał nas tradycyjny arabski, no można powiedzieć, spektakl weselny. Także w tym momencie jest imprezka, a my musimy w spokoju czekać tylko i obserwować. Niestety nie możemy dołączyć. A szkoda, bo z chęcią bym dzisiaj jeszcze potańczył. Więc dostaliśmy informację, że są wyniki, także będziemy je teraz sprawdzać. W Bahrainie wszystko jest za pośrednictwem jednej aplikacji, Be Aware Bahrain. Naciskamy i jak się załaduje, ok. No czyli możemy wyjść z pokoju. Jest negatyw, także... Zepsułeś. W końcu dotarliśmy na tor. Już po kwarantannie. Samochód przygotowywany. Idziemy zaraz na trackwalk.
Very long find a good way out.
I remember we did,
And if you go over the car on
we
the
were
right,
talking.
see, but till there you're always turning, so you cannot go full. Is that what I mean?
Tutaj samochód pana Valentino Rossi. Dalej Kessel Racing, ma 2 auta. Myślę, że na ostatnią chwilę jeszcze otwierają. Zachodzimy do nas. 2 GT4, jedna z poprzedniej epoki, ale nadal niesamowicie szybka. I Mercedes AMG. Podpisujemy teraz wszystkie papiery, deklarację, że jeśli coś się stanie, to nasza wina. Sami chcieliśmy być na torze. Tak, tutaj no widać, że 10 lat już minęło. Mamy prąd, tutaj jest zapłon, światła, kierunkowskazy, których tak naprawdę nigdy nie używamy. Tu w razie czego, jeśli jest pożar i automatycznie się nie odpali, to też możemy włączyć gaśnicę. Tu pokrętło do hamulców przód-tył, więc możemy przekręcać, czy chcemy bardziej, żeby było na przód, czy na tył. No i tutaj przycisk startu. Tu przekręcamy pokrętło, żeby wybrać, kto jedzie w samochodzie, żeby było wiadomo po transponderze. No a tutaj mamy system chłodzenia, czyli rurę, która idzie w tunelu i wieje nam teoretycznie w twarz. 6 lat jeździmy tym autem, nie wiem, czy do końca wieje, ale kończy się tu, a zaczyna się... Uwaga, przejdziemy. Chłopaki coś jeszcze kminią. A zaczyna się tam. Więc po drodze jeszcze zanim trafia do kabiny, jeszcze się ogrzewa, tutaj ładnie idzie sobie, ogrzewa się przy silniku, żeby było cieplutkie powietrze. I wychodzi właśnie nagrywać. Jeszcze kolejny sposób z drugiej strony to jest to piękne okienko, więc na prostych możemy, zazwyczaj jak jedziemy endurance wystawiamy rękę w rękawiczce oczywiście i wtedy powietrze odbija się od dłoni i wieje w twarz. Tutaj montujemy bidon, z którego możemy pić. Końcówkę raz udało mi się odgryźć, potem wszystko się wylało na podłogę, więc no, nie korzystamy z tego może tak często jak powinniśmy. No, tutaj Race Navigator, który pokazuje nam jakie robimy czasy, porównujemy sobie potem okrążenia, zazwyczaj z Patrykiem, bo jednak Patryk najbardziej doświadczony. Na kierownicy strzelamy długimi, komu się chcemy go wyprzedzić. Tutaj pit speed maksymalnie na 60 km/h, jak zredukujemy na drugi bieg, tu mówiłem przez radio, a tu wsteczny. I w sumie tyle, żadnych pokrętów ABS-u, trakcji, nic takiego. A zaraz pokażę wam jak wygląda w środku Mercedes. To już troszeczkę inna bajka, jak sami zobaczycie. No, pierwszą różnicę, którą widać, to że jest zdejmowana kierownica, która wisi teraz tu. Mnóstwo przycisków, lewo, prawo, regulacje. Tu mamy regulację ABS-u w 11 zakresach, trakcję w 11 zakresach. Kubełkowy fotel cały z karbonu. No tak już troszeczkę powiedzmy nowszy system. Między innymi mają też klimę, ale nie jeżdżę tym autem, więc nie wiem gdzie ona jest. 10 lat development i widać różnicę, tak? Samochód zupełnie innej klasy. No a jednak mierzymy się z nimi, staramy się jak możemy. Niestety pompa wspomagania postanowiła powiedzieć do widzenia jako pierwsza. Sprawdzamy teraz w kontenerze, czy mamy zapasową, ale najprawdopodobniej...
Sì, e poi ha due laterali. Sì, una da 10 e una da 6. Ma la vaschettina
Tak, w tym momencie chłopaki wykręcają pompę i będziemy instalować. Okazało się, że mamy zapasową.
Marco that set the quickest time at 2 minutes 0.506, and the third free practice session was the quickest of the three that we've seen so far. And what was really good to see in that third free practice session is that it was a number 33 car that was topping the times, because that car missed a chunk of running over the course of yesterday. Nice bin Abdullah Khalifa put the car into the wall, caused a fair amount of damage to it in yesterday's circuit activity. The Two-Seas Motorsport team worked night and day to ensure that the car was ready for this morning, and over the course of the three practice sessions, it was third in the first session, it was second in the second session, it topped the times in the third session, so going to show no ill effects following the problems that we felt that car yesterday. So on to the times. At the moment, this is the Castle Racing Ferrari that tops the times. That's the number 27 car, which has got Francesco Zolo. That's the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche up on its jacks. No wheels on that as yet, but other cars already started to trickle down the pit lane, which includes the Scuderia Villobra Corsa Mercedes. I think there's a Maserati, the SVG Motorsport Maserati heading out as well. So that is Antoni Chodzeń that's behind the wheel. The Castle Racing Ferrari that's just gone through. You can see it is now darkness now, so still a bit of light in the sky. Porsche, or Papanini's Porsche, I should say. He is now looking to try and get back on it again. This is the number 90 Maserati, number 50 Maserati I should say, which is Antoni Chodzeń. That car is currently slowest of the 12. Marco Fretzer pushing as hard as he possibly can. Marco, who we've seen racing in the European Le Mans series, he's done the Spa 24 Hour in the past as well. First cut his teeth in Formula Renault, did Marco Fretzer, in European Formula Renault and in certainly looks like the car that had all the problems yesterday.
Say apologies, we're a little bit late starting the stream, but we're about to get this part one of the 12-hour race underway. I'll tell you a little bit about the format as and when we get things going, but the two-seats McLarens both line up there on the front row of the grid. Neat 2x2 order. The first 6 hours coming up, and we are about to go green in the first ever running of the Gulf 12 Hours Bahrain edition. Lights go out, and they start to flick their way up towards turn one. We're on the full Grand Prix circuit, full 3.363 mile, and already there's lots of squeezing going on up towards turn one, but it is going to be the two-seats McLarens that will lead the pack. Great start though from the Bentley on the Ewan Mackay from what was at 6th position on the grid. Ewan Mackay is already up into 2nd position. Lewis Williamson's having to take to the curbs to avoid everybody as he next corner now. Nikolai Kadai is up the inside of Brendan Reed to take as long as Lewis Williamson to go through, but then run wide on the next corner as has a spin. Unfortunately, been going so well. flag, because off on the side there was the Maserati. Now that was Antoni Chodzeń that's off at the side. Not entirely sure what the problem was with the Maserati, but I think, yeah, there it is now, just reversing out of harm's way. Hopefully that is going to be able to get going. Right, okay, that looks as though that's got a toe link that's gone or something, isn't it? Yes, certainly some suspension damage on that car. That is going to have to limp its way a long, long way around the tractor through some more traffic. There is the Maserati, yeah, limping back to the pit lane. That has got significant issues with the left rear suspension on that car. You can see it crabbing down there. Antoni Chodzeń is looking to try and get the car back as quickly as he can without doing any more damage, and that certainly looks like, yeah, either suspension failure or a toe link that's gone on that car, but he is going to try and stay out of harm's way. That left rear Pirelli tyre won't be liking.
Niestety na wyjściu z hairpina rozwaliło się tylnie lewe zawieszenie. Jesteśmy już 10 kółek do tyłu, no ale jest 12 godzin przed nami, nie poddajemy się, no i lecimy do końca. Jak pękło zawieszenie, to przywaliłem jeszcze w bandę, więc
All right, there's the Maserati. The Maserati is back out now. That is good to see. Have we had a change of driver whilst it's been in the pit lane? Yes is the answer. So the Maserati was brought into the pit lane by Antoni Chodzeń, and it is now Piotr Chodzeń that's behind the wheel. So that has had a driver change. So all is well, is that it is one of the turbos that is slightly down on power. So the car is drivable, hence why we saw Lewis Williams stay out for a lap.
super.
We're looking at the Maserati now. This is Piotr Chodzeń. The Maserati is some way off the pace of the rest of the cars in terms of the number of laps it's completed. It is several laps adrift, I'm afraid to say, but that is because it had a suspension failure. For only just joining us for this running of the Gulf 12 Hours in Bahrain, welcome along. It had a suspension failure, not caused by any contact, but that pitched the car off the circuit. It was limped by Antoni Chodzeń back round to the pit lane, and the team have done great work repairing. But that is a lap adrift. Back out of the pit lane has come the Maserati, and as I thought, it is Piotr Chodzeń that's still behind the wheel. So there was just a case of refueling the car and changing the Pirelli tyres. Piotr stays behind the wheel of it. So Piotr is 50 years of age nowadays. A bit of racing in the Maserati Super Trofeo. A bit of racing in the Italian GT Championship as well. We have seen him out in the Gulf 12 Hours in the past as well. He's got his son joining in with the team. We've got Patrick Zamparini as well, scheduled to take over that Maserati MC GT4. Might not be the most modern evolution nowadays of GT4 cars, the Maserati, but my goodness me, not only do they look good, they sound fantastic, the Maseratis. But certainly in terms of development and evolutions, and even launch. They've been taken over by things like the McLarens and the Audi A4s and some of the newer cars, but the balance of performance helps, and certainly with the balance of performance as well in the pit stops as well. With the Maserati we have been on something like 140 seconds, which was originally what they were thinking the pit stops would be for the GT4 cars. That would have been a disadvantage for the Maserati because of its wheel stud configuration, so it was decided to increase it by 10 seconds, so it's a minute and 50 seconds. Did I say an hour and 40? Minute and 50 seconds that the GT4 cars stopped for now. And that has certainly helped the cause of the Maserati, albeit what didn't help the cause in this race of the Maserati was that suspension failure early on, I'm afraid to say. Loggy, which has all been going on whilst we've been catching up with the things that are going on, and this is for position here. This is Ewan Mackay getting through and past Ian Loggy at turn number 1. They almost bounce off each other on the exit of the corner as they head round through turn 2 and turn 3. Ian Loggy over the curbs, keeping his foot in. Valentino Rossi is trying to pick them off, but he's a lap adrift of this pair as they head up towards turn 4. So this is the fight for 3rd and 4th, with the car that's in 5th place but a lap adrift involved as well. Almost contact between the front end of the Bentley and the tail end of the Mercedes there. So real elbows out stuff in this one, as Ian Loggy was hugely keen to try and get himself through and ahead of Callum McLeod, and has managed to do so. So Mercedes back into 3rd, Bentley back down into 4th, but attacking up the inside very late on the brakes, heading in towards turn number 5. Ian Loggy tried to close, or turn number 8, tried to close the door, but realised that the Bentley was alongside and they were going to clatter into each other, so couldn't turn the car into the corner. And as a result of that, through has gone Valentino Rossi to unlap himself from the Mercedes, and now try and unlap himself from the Bentley as well. They head out of turn number 10. What a great fight it is. This is 3rd, 4th and 5th together, but the Ferrari is not on the same lap as the Bentley and the Mercedes. It is a lap adrift as they head up towards the braking area for turn number 11. Great stuff in the first ever running of the... So we are now 4 hours into this first 6-hour part of the race. The Maserati is back out. Oh, right, they had to fix the left rear suspension, so it was a problem. Thank you to Zach, one of our roving reporters out there as part of the Gulf 12-hour team. The Maserati that I thought had come into the pits not long after Antoni Chodzeń had taken over the car, it does appear that there was a problem again with the left rear suspension on that car, so they've had to fix it again. So it was a quick stop, but I suppose that's only because they knew what they need to do, because they've already done it once today. And again, for Antoni Chodzeń, it means that his driving time was somewhat limited again, because he hadn't had much time behind the wheel in his first stint because of rear suspension failure, and had the same suspension failure in his second stint, which again has shortened his driving time because Dad's taken over, which is Piotr Chodzeń. So there'll be a bit more driving for him to do, probably in part 2, and less so for Dad potentially. Should be any second now. I think Patrick Zamparini at the wheel of the Maserati comes through. That is going to be finishing in 10th place. And behind him on the road, finishing in 6th overall, is Emanuele Tabaki.
Więc tak, po jeździe w awaryjnym trybie skrzyni biegów, potem rozpadło mi się tylnie lewe zawieszenie na wyjściu z hairpina, więc jeszcze straciliśmy dodatkowe 12 kółek. Na szczęście to się udało połowicznie naprawić, aczkolwiek bez ustawienia geometrii, także samochód był tak nie do końca. Tak czy siak jedziemy dalej, jesteśmy 12 okrążeń za liderem naszej klasy, także jest w porządku. Ogólnie rzecz biorąc, to miało być jedno wielkie pożegnanie tego auta. Także sam fakt, że jedziemy dalej i walczymy o to, żeby w ogóle dojechać, moim zdaniem jest świetną rzeczą. A tutaj to, co zostało z tylniego lewego koła, tak? Więc mniej więcej na czymś takim jechałem całe okrążenie. Trochę straciliśmy czasu, no ale jedziemy dalej z uśmiechami na twarzy. Marcela jest też.
Jestem.
Także idziemy sobie teraz do Parcu Fermé zobaczyć, jak wygląda samochód.
A alongside in terms of the classifications. There's only one AM car in the field. That's the red and white Ferrari that's there on the third row of the grid. Top four cars all on the same lap. Remember, the cars in fifth and sixth are just one lap off the lead. The leading two GT4 cars are on the same lap as well, not as the leaders, but as themselves. And we're about to get the final 6 hours underway. We're at the halfway point of the race. We're now into part two of the 2021 Gulf 12 Hours Bahrain edition. And Ben Barnicoat leads the charge up towards turn number one, the tightest corner, as he said on the video, as they turn their way in towards the right-hander. It's Ben Barnicoat that leads the race. It is going to be Chris Froggatt that comes out in second position at this stage. It looks as though Mauro Calamia has hung on to third, despite the very best efforts of Valentino Rossi, who is very quick out of the blocks and looking to try and make progress here as they thunder their way down the straight and in towards the braking area. So, is he going to have another go this time? Mauro Calamia, yes, finally unlocks the door. Be careful not to run wide on the exit of the corner, otherwise it allows Valentino Rossi straight back, and that's exactly what has happened. He was so late on the brake. Is the car that he's overtaken is the Maserati. Beautiful looking, fabulous sounding as well, that Maserati MC GT4. That is Antoni Hudson, just behind the wheel of that car. Polish driver is Antoni, 23 years of age, sharing the car with his father as well. Dad's what, 50 nowadays, Piotr, and they've largely raced together in similar categories, both himself and Dad, and Patrick Zamparini as well. They've done a mixture of Gulf 12 Hours, European GT4, a bit of GT Italia as well, which is the Italian GT Championship, and certainly for Piotr and Patrick Zamparini, a chunk of racing in the Maserati Trofeo in the past as well. So that is their sort of background as a team, as a trio that are sharing that car.
Ósma godzina wyścigu. Pomału zaczyna się robić ciężko. Niektórzy odpadają, niektórzy siedzą, się męczą, inni nadal patrzą i stoją się, bo syn jedzie i się stresują. O, Patryk akurat będzie zjeżdżał i robimy zmianę. Wsiada tata.
Sorry, into this second part of the race. Two GT4 cars getting themselves together. That is Lars Damen with Patrick Zamparini right behind. There's actually 5 laps difference between these two cars. The McLaren having lost a chunk of time in the pit lane with a drive-through penalty, and in particular that wheel sensor issue that they had. The Maserati that's behind, all of its time has been lost in the pit lane with 2 separate left rear suspension failures, one very early on in the race coming when Antoni Hudson was behind the wheel of the car, and 2-3 hours later on when he got back in the car midway through his stint again there was another failure of that left rear suspension. Didn't take them as long to fix it second time round, largely because they probably knew what the issue was, or had already had the practice doing it, so it was an easier process to deal with because they knew the parts they needed, they knew the bits that they needed to inspect and get off the car and turn it around and get it back out. But those two GT4s are fighting away together whilst Ian Logging puts a further lap on them at the wheel of the Mercedes.
Jedziemy dalej, jeszcze tylko 4 godziny, jesteśmy na mecie. See?
Zamparini, this wonderful looking Porsche, and there, oh no, that's lights out as well, so that's a problem, and that is for, there we go, lights back on again. Is it a spin or is it a problem for the number 77 car? Either way, it's not ideal for Jan Kingelberg, but I do think that is potentially a mechanical issue. We've already seen that car that was leading GT4 have problems with what we believe was a wheel sensor on the car. It's already had a drive-through penalty. It is already now 10 laps off the lead of GT4, having been in the lead of it just at the start of this race. And it does make me wonder as to whether we are going to have maybe a further issue for that car. Flash of the lights for Ian Logging as he looks to try and cruise his way past the Maserati that now runs second position in GT4.
Who'd have thought that with the suspension failure for that car in the hands of Antoni Chodzeń very early on, and then when he got back behind the wheel for his second stint in Part 1, further left rear suspension damage. So it's lost all of its laps very early on in the race, but since then, touch wood, it's run reasonably cleanly, hasn't it? Stayed out of trouble, the Maserati. It's run its own race, and through a bit of misfortune for others, it's now picked up a place in GT4. Over the start-finish line for the start of lap number 235 comes Martin Kodrich. We will surely see some more cars heading towards the pits before too much longer. I think for the GT3 cars, we're probably 10 minutes away from start.
Cała ekipa mniej więcej przez 12 godzin. Jesteśmy tutaj w centrali dowodzenia. Widzimy wszystkie czasy, jest picie, jedzenie też schowane. Można odpocząć, posiedzieć na telefonie, ponagrywać. Porobić zdjęcia. Postresować się trochę.
Zobacz, już prawie 3 minuty są.
International circuit into the pit lane now. That is Piotr, who is clambering out of the car, holding his back a little bit. That looks like there's been a tough stint for Piotr, who is now, what, 50 years of age, really. He's, 2 or 3 years older than Patrick Zamparini, who he shares the car with. His son, which is just 23 years of age, Antoni Chodzeń, is potentially going to get back on board that car. Let's have a quick look. So the car was started by Antoni. We'll see as to whether he dives back on board for stint number 2, because of course both of his stints in Part 1 were rather compromised by suspension failure on that Maserati. So I think if you're going to equalise the driving time, you'd shove him back in and give him a bit more time, I would have thought. So, there is our race leader, Isa bin Abdullah Al Khalifa, leading the race, having taken over the car from Martin Kodrich, who took over from the starting driver Ben Barnico. The pit stop for the Maserati MC4 continues. You can see not centre-locking wheels, as I mentioned in Part 1 of this race. It is individual studs on the wheels, either 4 or 5, impossible to tell from the camera angle that we're looking at, but it is not as quick as doing it with centre-locking wheels. And you can see off comes one set of Pirelli tyres, on will go another. Out has come the airline, which activates the air jacks. They will release the pressure out of the system. Down it goes onto all 4 wheels. Wait for the last few seconds to count down to make sure you don't release the car too early to trundle its way down pit lane, because you can't release the car early and then it stop at pit lane exit until the requisite number of seconds, that being 150 for a GT4 car, have elapsed. You've got to hold it in the pit box and then release it so it continues down the pit lane. And I think clock has ticked sufficiently. Up comes the lollipop, away goes the Mazda, and we'll rejoin the race in the hands of... Is it Antoni Chodzeń? Yes, it is. Yeah, I thought it might be, on the basis that he had less driving time in Part 1 of the race because of the suspension issues that befell that car on 2 separate occasions, both occasions of which he was behind the wheel of it. So in for stint number 2 in Part 2 of the Gulf 12 Hours of Bahrain. So back out onto the circuit he goes. That car, remember, is running second in the GT4 category, but I think is now, as a result of its pit stop, it has done one more pit stop, I think, than the McLaren. Difficult to tell, because what the system does is it counts every time the car comes into the pit lane. So, for instance, it's showing 4 stops for the Maserati. I know one of them is a drive-through penalty. It's showing 6 stops, more than anybody in this part of the race, for the number 77 Optimum Motorsport car. Well, I know one of those, if not 2 of those, are mechanical issues.
Parę słów dla twoich wiernych followersów.
Nie mam nic do powiedzenia. Super stint. Zostały jeszcze 2 godziny. Jesteśmy drudzy. Nie wiem jak. Samochód jedzie, też nie wiem jak. Jedziemy dosyć szybko. Też nie wiem jak. no jedziemy. Na razie. Więc tak, z centrum dowodzenia, gdzie wszystko się odbywa i śledzimy wyścig na żywo, przechodzimy do naszej szatni. Tutaj toaleta, a tutaj nasza szatnia. Niestety jesteśmy już po paru dobrych godzinach, więc jest troszkę bałagan. Tutaj sekcja Patryka, tutaj mamy różne przekąski, picie energetyczne, jakieś batony, żele. Oczywiście z Polski musieliśmy przywieźć mieszankę wedlowską, pierniczki, woda. Tutaj moja sekcja, tutaj sekcja taty. No i tak naprawdę tutaj przychodzimy, żeby się przybierać, odpocząć i trochę wyciszyć, bo jednak jest dosyć głośno na zewnątrz, więc tutaj mamy miejsce, gdzie mamy trochę spokoju.
So, gosh, should be. There we go, there's a lollipop. Couldn't quite see it because of the reflection of the light of it. Is it going to be Piotr Chodzeń that gets back behind the wheel? Confirmation will be given any second now. And it is showing as Patrick Zamparini still behind the wheel. So, looks as though Zamparini is still behind the wheel of that car, which didn't quite see, because didn't see all of the pit stop take place, so couldn't see whether the driver change occurred or not. But there is no change to the notification of the driver that's in the car. It may well be that they've just not switched the transponder from one position to the other, because it's the transponder, the little device inside the car that sends an electronic signal as the car breaks the various beams around the circuit, the start-finish line, pit in, pit out, and the various sectors. That little transponder has a unique number, but there's a switch in the car. Bentley scything its way through and past Patrick Zamparini. So Andy Merrick pressing on. That car is currently 3 laps off the lead now, the Bentley. And Andy Merrick's times are more than respectable. However, he is not lapping a great deal, if any, quicker really than the cars ahead at this stage. He's had a bit of traffic to deal with on this lap, but he's lapping 2-minute 4.4. Valentino Rossi ahead of him is lapping 2-minute 4.3, but is a full lap ahead on the Bentley, which did have a period where it was leading. Late pit stop for Patrick Zamparini. So this is the car that is still very comfortably in second spot in GT4, and it looks like the team were expecting it to come in. So Zamparini heading up towards pit lane exit, brings the car to a halt, and it looks as though fuel is going in. And the change. It does look as though, yeah, we've got drivers suited and booted, or at least one driver suited and booted and ready to go. And we might have a little late driver change for this car. I suspect it might be Piotr Chodzeń that's getting back in. Refueling takes place. Once the refueling is done, that's when we can get the driver change being done and dusted. Yes, we are indeed getting done, and it is one of the substances going in. It looked like it was the overalls that Antoni had earlier on, but I would have thought it was Piotr, because I've actually thought it was 2 stints behind the wheel of the car. Piotr has only done 1 stint so far. And double of them. Piotr, I would say it should be Piotr, because if Antoni has done 2 stints, he is the silver graded driver. The bronzes need to do the requisite amount of time behind the wheel of the car, which would be, for a GT4 car, 1 silver and 2 bronzes would be, they would need to do 4 hours combined time, the bronze drivers. So I really think it ought to be Piotr, because if they don't get Piotr back in the car, they might not have had, over the course of the 6 hours, both of the bronze drivers doing 4 hours of the 6. Because with Antoni Chodzeń, who's the silver, having done 2 stints, that's going to equate to nearly 2 hours for him. So they've got to put the bronze back in. They cannot put the silver driver back in. I'm sure that's the way it is going to work, and confirmation will be given as and when that car heads back out of pit lane that it will be, I'm sure, Piotr that's behind the wheel. Yes, it is. Yeah. So thought it would be. Didn't think they could put Antoni back out, because that would mean that the bronze drivers would not clock up sufficient time behind the wheel, and that would transgress the regulations. So Piotr heads out there, so that means that they have done an extra stop in reality. So we have had what? Antoni giving way to Patrick Zamparini, Zamparini giving way to Piotr Chodzeń, Piotr Chodzeń giving way to Antoni Chodzeń, Antoni Chodzeń giving way back to Patrick Zamparini, and him giving back. Wait, no, so that's it. That's ticked them all off. So that is 5 stops. So that is the last stop that they need to do. And it also, hopefully, by the time he's in the car, gives Piotr Chodzeń, coupled with Patrick Zamparini, the 2 bronze drivers, their cumulative time that they've spent behind the wheel needs to be more than 4 hours, and that should hopefully equate to that, because that is the way the regulations are written in GT4, where you've got 1 silver and 2 bronzes. The bronze drivers have to have done 4 hours out of the 6. So we're into almost the last half an hour of this race. Porsche fan 1.
Taki dźwięk, to jest metaliczny, mówię, kurde! Mówię, padnie na koniec, ale nie padło.
Okay, in 3rd place, Optimum Motorsport, number 77, Jan Klingelberg, Warren Hughes, Lars Darman and Charles Hollands. Congratulations, gentlemen. In 2nd place, SVC Sport Management, car number 50, Antoni Chodzeń, Piotr Chodzeń and Patrick Zamparini. And finally, the winners from Squadra Villorba Corsa, car number 90, Jean-Luc Daria, Benedetto Streganano, Pier Giacomo Randazzo, and Michele Carmali. Congratulations, gentlemen. Look ahead to the cameras, please.